At 7:18 a.m., Marin Holt swiped her badge and felt the building breathe, the same way it always did. Cold air, polished concrete, coffee that smelled like someone else's ambition. The lobby screens looped bright smiles and softer lies. Vanta Bridge Wellness, because we care. She'd helped build the dashboard behind that slogan. Not the posters, not the cheerful emails, the machine underneath. The one that took heart rates, sleep patterns, step counts, stress scores, and turned them into clean little numbers that executives could understand. Numbers don't look like cruelty. They look like decisions. As she walked past the reception desk, she saw the security guard glance up, then quickly look away like he'd been trained to forget her face. That was new. She kept moving. The elevator was empty, which was also new. Usually, at this hour, there were interns and analysts and sales reps shaking energy drinks like maracas, all of them pretending they weren't scared of being average. But today, the building felt like a held breath. On the 32nd floor, the doors opened to the People Analytics pod. Soft carpeting, whiteboards full of clean nonsense, and a wall of glass that made you feel visible even when nobody looked at you. Marin Holt slid into her chair and woke her laptop with a touch so gentle it felt like an apology. Her inbox loaded. One calendar invite sat at the top like a bullet placed carefully on a pillow. Check in Marin Holt Noinama. No agenda. No HR partner included. Just the sender. Gavin Weller, VP of People Operations. Gavin's name always sounded friendly in writing. Like he'd be the kind of man who remembered your dog's birthday. In person, he had the sort of calm that came from never being the one sacrificed. Marin Holt didn't click the invite yet. She stared at it, like it might blink first. Then she opened the internal analytics portal. She didn't go to her usual dashboards. She didn't check engagement, retention, or survey sentiment. She went to a hidden tab that wasn't supposed to exist because she was the one who had created it. Pulse. Executive View. The wellness program's real name was Pulse. Publicly, Pulse was a benefit. Privately, Pulse was a lens. A way to see who was tired, who was stressed, who was pregnant before they told anyone, who was depressed before they admitted it, who was losing sleep before they missed a deadline. Pulse didn't just track bodies. Pulse predicted obedience. When Marin Holt clicked the tab, the screen hesitated, then loaded a list of employee IDs with color-coded risk tiers. Green, yellow, orange, red. She swallowed. The acquisition had happened 3 weeks ago. Since then, executives had been walking around with a new kind of smile, the kind that didn't ask permission. They called it integration. They said, synergy, the way people say amen. Marin Holt scrolled. And then, she saw it. A new column appeared on the far right, one she had never built. Termination priority. Her fingers went cold. She clicked the header. The list sorted. At 7:26 a.m., Marin Holt watched her own name climb, like it had been waiting for gravity to do its job. Marin Holt priority. 1. Not employee ID, not department, not risk tier. Her name? Her real name, spelled right, like someone wanted her to feel seen. Under it was a note field, short and surgical. Single point of failure. Knows too much. High discretion required. For a moment, Marin Holt couldn't hear anything but her own pulse. Ironic, cruel, precise. She leaned back slowly, as if the chair might break if she moved too fast. This wasn't a layoff list. This was a removal list. And she was at the top. She stared at the screen, trying to think like someone who didn't care. Like Gavin. Like the new executives with their smooth hands and polished words. Then she saw something that made her throat tighten. The list wasn't just names. It was paired with a second hidden field. Recommended approach. She hovered over it. A tooltip popped up. Follow Compliance Protocol 9. Silent exit. Silent exit. No announcement, no goodbye. Just a badge that stops working and a paycheck that ends politely. A person erased cleanly enough that the company can call it mutual. Marin Holt reached for her coffee and realized her hand was shaking. She set the cup down before it spilled. Then she clicked into the audit logs. The system recorded everything. Who created fields, who modified calculations, who exported reports. She knew where to look because she had designed the logs like a lock, thinking it would keep the wrong hands out. Now she needed it to keep the right hands trapped. The column, Termination Priority, had a creation timestamp. At 6:44 a.m., it had been added by an admin account with a name that made her stomach drop. Sloan Mercer, Chief Technology Officer. Sloan was the kind of executive who spoke softly to make you lean in, then used your closeness to crush you. She was famous for saying she was data-driven, as if that made her moral. She'd once told Marin Holt during a meeting, "I love numbers because they don't have feelings." And then she'd smiled, like that was wisdom. Now Sloan had built a knife inside a wellness app, and Gavin had booked a check-in. Marin Holt finally clicked the calendar invite. She read it again like it might change. Check-in Marin Holt. Noina. M. Check-in. Like pulse. Like a heartbeat. Like the company was about to see if she was still alive. She closed her eyes for 1 second. In that second, she thought of her mother, who used to tell her, "If you ever feel like you're being watched, act like you're holding a match. Because when people watch you, they don't just look. They wait." At Shu. For Tioet, A. M. Marin Holt opened a new document and typed a title at the top. The Pulse Report. Then she wrote one sentence beneath it. "If I disappear, this is why." She didn't know yet who would read it. Compliance? The board? A journalist? A courtroom? She only knew one thing, and it was the first clean thought she'd had all morning. They wanted a silent exit. So she was going to give them noise they couldn't mute. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Just 4 words. "Stop digging. Be smart." Marin Holt stared at the message until the letters stopped looking like ink and started looking like hands around her throat. She didn't reply. She took a screenshot of the termination list and saved it in a secure folder that wasn't on the company drive. Then, she did something that felt reckless and holy. She printed it. The printer in the corner hummed, too loud for a quiet office, like it was confessing for her. At 7:55 a.m., as she picked up the paper, she noticed the faint watermark across the bottom. Confidential executive, use only. She folded it once, not to hide it, to make it fit into a pocket close to her heart. Across the pod, someone laughed, one of those easy laughs from people who still believed the company's emails. Marin Holt looked through the glass wall and saw 2 men from IT walking toward her area with purpose, their badges swinging, their eyes scanning like they were looking for a target. One of them held a slim black laptop. The other carried a small gray case. A wipe kit. Data sanitation. Silent exit. Her mouth went dry. At 8:02 a.m., her laptop suddenly disconnected from Wi-Fi. The icon in the corner turned into a warning triangle, like a tiny siren. A system banner appeared across the top of her screen. Security update. Your session has been terminated. She tried to reconnect. It rejected her. She tried to log back in. It failed. Then a second banner popped up, colder than the first. Unauthorized access detected. Please report to people operations. Unauthorized access. Like she had broken into her own work. Like she had hacked the system she built. Marin Holt felt the floor tilt. This wasn't just a firing. This was a framing. They were going to label her as the threat, the leaker, the unstable analyst who overstepped. And once that story existed, it would be easier for everyone else to believe she deserved to disappear. She stood slowly, smoothing her sweater like she could smooth reality. In the reflection of the glass, she saw herself. Calm face, controlled posture, eyes too awake. A woman pretending she wasn't terrified. Then she saw something else in the reflection. Behind her, on the far wall, one of the security cameras shifted. It wasn't supposed to move, but it moved. It angled toward her desk, toward her pocket, toward the folded paper that proved everything. At Otta. T-O-A-M. Marin Holt made a decision that would change the shape of the next week and the fate of people who thought they were untouchable. She didn't run. She didn't call anyone. She didn't plead. She walked out of the pod as if she had nothing to hide, and she headed straight toward the only place in the building where truth still had a seat at the table. Compliance. Because she knew a secret about compliance that most employees didn't. Compliance wasn't there to protect people. Compliance was there to protect the company. And if she could prove the company was protecting the wrong people, then the company would do what it always did. It would eat its own. At 8:18 a.m., Marin Holt stepped into the hallway, and the building finally exhaled. But not with relief. With hunger. At 8:24 a.m., Marin Holt pushed open the frosted glass door, marked compliance and risk. The lettering was thin, tasteful, designed to feel harmless, like a promise written in pencil. Inside, the air was warmer. Too warm. The kind of warmth that makes people talk faster just to leave sooner. A woman looked up from behind the reception desk. Late 40s. Neutral blazer, neutral face, neutral eyes that had seen too much to care and too little to panic. Name? She asked. Marin Holt, she said evenly. I was flagged for unauthorized access. The woman's fingers paused on the keyboard for half a beat. Not long enough to be dramatic. Long enough to be real. Have a seat, she said. Someone will be with you. The chairs were low and soft, designed to relax you into giving up. Marin Holt didn't sit right away. She stood there, holding her bag like it contained something fragile. Because it did. At 8:29 a.m., a door opened to the left, and a man stepped out. Early 50s, wire-rim glasses. Smile that looked practiced in a mirror before difficult conversations. Marin, he said, already using her first name. I'm Daniel. Let's talk. His office was smaller than she expected. No windows, just a table, 2 chairs, and a framed poster on the wall that read, Integrity is everyone's responsibility. Daniel gestured for her to sit. She did. He folded his hands and leaned forward just enough to look engaged without looking aggressive. So, he said gently, I'm seeing a system alert tied to your credentials. Can you tell me what you were working on this morning? This was the moment. Marin Holt felt it clearly, the fork in the road. The old instinct whispered, Explain. Defend. Be reasonable. That instinct had kept her employed for 7 years. It would not keep her alive now. I was reviewing Pulse Executive Views, she said calmly. Specifically, a column labeled Termination Priority that I did not build. Daniel blinked. Once. Just once. I'm not familiar with that terminology, he said. That doesn't surprise me, Marin Holt replied. It was created at 6:44 a.m. by Sloan Mercer's admin account. Silence settled between them like dust. Daniel leaned back. His chair creaked softly, betraying him. That's a serious allegation, he said. I know, she said. That's why I came here instead of emailing it. He studied her now, not as an employee, but as a variable. Why not HR? He asked. Because HR works for Gavin, she thought. Because HR doesn't audit executives, she said out loud. Daniel's jaw tightened, just slightly. What exactly did you see? He asked. Marin Holt reached into her bag and pulled out the folded paper. She placed it on the table without unfolding it yet, like a card dealer waiting for the right moment. A ranked list of employees slated for silent exit, she said. Including me. Priority 1. Daniel didn't touch the paper. Why would anyone target you? He asked. Because I built the locks, she thought. Because I know how Pulse really works, she said. And because knowledge becomes liability when strategy changes. Daniel exhaled slowly through his nose. You understand, he said, that printing confidential material violates policy. Yes, Marin Holt said. That's why I also preserved the audit trail. And screenshots. And off-network copies. Now he looked at the paper. He unfolded it. At 8:37 a.m., Daniel read in silence. His eyes moved left to right. Then, back again. He adjusted his glasses. He didn't ask if it was real. He asked, Who else knows you have this? No one, Marin Holt said. Yet. That's not an answer, he said. It's a timeline, she replied. Daniel leaned forward again, this time slower. You're aware, he said carefully, that compliance protects the company, not individuals. I'm aware, she said. That's why I'm showing you executives using health data to preemptively terminate employees without disclosure. He froze. Health data? He asked. Marin Holt nodded. Pulse integrates wearable metrics, stress indicators, sleep disruption, and pregnancy probability modeling. all of it tied to productivity forecasts. Daniel's face drained of color. Pregnancy? Probability? He repeated. Yes, she said. It's flagged as attrition risk. At 8:42 a.m., there was a knock on the door. Daniel didn't answer right away. The knock came again. Daniel? A voice called. Gavin's voice. Polite. Light. Poisoned with familiarity. Just checking in. IT flagged a potential data incident. Daniel stood. One moment, he said toward the door. He turned back to Maren Holt. Do you have proof of the health data linkage? He whispered. She slid her phone across the table and unlocked it. On the screen was a chart. Clean. Beautiful. Damning. Pulse input streams mapped directly to termination recommendations. Daniel closed his eyes. Just for a second. Then he opened them, and they were sharp. Stay here, he said. Do not leave this room. He stepped out. At 8:45 a.m., Maren Holt sat alone in a compliance office that suddenly felt like a courtroom before the judge arrives. Her phone vibrated. Another unknown number. You think compliance will save you? Cute. She deleted the message. Then, she did something dangerous. She smiled. Because she knew something they didn't. Compliance moved slowly in public. But privately, compliance moved like fire. At 8:52 a.m., the building's internal network hiccuped. Just a blip. Small enough that most people didn't notice. But Maren Holt noticed. Because she had designed Pulse to fail gracefully. And that failure pattern was wrong. Someone had locked executive access. Someone had frozen dashboards. Someone had hit the red button. At 8:57 a.m., Daniel returned. His face was different now. Not calm. Focused. Gavin and Sloan are in a conference room, he said. Arguing. About me? Maren Holt asked. About exposure, he replied. He sat down, folded his hands, and looked at her like a man making a choice. We are initiating a level 3 compliance hold, he said. All Pulse data is frozen pending review. Her chest tightened. And my status? She asked. For now, Daniel said. You are not to be terminated, escorted, or contacted by HR. For now. He leaned closer. I need to ask you something, Maren, he said. And I need you to be very honest. She met his eyes. Did you leak anything outside this company? No, she said. Do you plan to? He asked. She paused. Just long enough to be truthful. I plan to survive, Maren Holt said. What that requires depends on what they do next. Daniel nodded slowly. At 9 a.m., her original calendar invite began. Check in, Maren. Holt 9 She looked at Daniel. He looked at the screen. That meeting, he said, is cancelled. Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an internal email. Meeting cancelled. Will reschedule. No signature. Just a void. At 9:04 a.m., Maren Holt realized something profound. They were afraid. Not of her. Of the paper trail. And fear, in an organization like this, was leverage. She stood. What happens now? She asked. Daniel exhaled. Now, he said. We see who tries to erase what. At 9:17 a.m., Maren Holt sat alone in a small conference room inside compliance. The kind of room no one ever booked unless they were afraid to leave a record. The walls were soundproofed. The table was bare. No screens, no markers. Just her bag, and the slow realization that silence was about to be weaponized against her. Her phone vibrated. This time, it wasn't an unknown number. It was an internal Slack message from a channel she hadn't seen in years. Number People Analytics. Leadership. The channel had been dormant since the acquisition. Now it was alive. The first message appeared. Gavin Weller. We need to align quickly. There's concern around data governance and individual conduct. Individual conduct. Maren Holt felt a chill crawl up her spine. She didn't respond. Another message followed. Sloan Mercer. To be clear, no executive-approved termination list exists. Any claim otherwise is misinformation. Misinformation. That word landed heavy. Strategic. Familiar. This wasn't damage control. This was narrative construction. At 9:21 a.m., Maren Holt realized what they were doing. They weren't trying to erase the data. They were trying to erase her credibility. If she became unstable, emotional, or overinvested, then the data would become questionable by association. Truth doesn't die when it's disproven. It dies when the messenger does. The door opened quietly. Daniel stepped in and closed it behind him. "They're moving," he said. "I know," Marin Holt replied. "They're reframing." Daniel nodded. "HR just escalated a concern about your behavioral state." Her lips pressed together. "Let me guess," she said. "Sudden stress indicators. Emotional volatility." Daniel didn't deny it. "They pulled pulse summaries," he said. "Your pulse summaries." Of course they did. At 9:24 a.m., Marin Holt let out a short, humorless laugh. "So they're using the weapon on the person who built it," she said. "Classic." Daniel leaned against the table. "They're suggesting," he said carefully, "that your recent access patterns indicate fixation." "Fixation," she repeated. "On my own job being erased." Daniel lowered his voice. "They're building a case that you're a single point of failure, that removing you stabilizes the system." There it was. The phrase from the list. Single point of failure. Marin Holt closed her eyes. Not because she was overwhelmed, because she was calculating. At 9:28 a.m., she opened her bag and pulled out a second folder. Daniel frowned. "What's that?" he asked. "That," she said, "is what they don't know exists." She slid it across the table. "Before the acquisition," Marin Holt continued, "I was asked to prepare a redundancy analysis." Quietly, no email trail, Daniel opened the folder. Inside were diagrams, access flows, approval chains, and one page, highlighted, Pulse Executive Override, Dual Control Required. Daniel looked up. "Sloan removed the dual control?" he asked. "Yes," Marin Holt said. At 6:44 a.m., Daniel inhaled sharply. "That violates SOX, HIPAA adjacency, and internal governance," she finished. "Yes." At 9:32 a.m., Daniel leaned back, eyes distant. "They're not just exposed," he said. "They're naked." "Yes," Marin Holt said softly. "And now they're trying to dress me in madness." Her phone buzzed again. This time, it was an email. Subject: Immediate wellness check. From People Care Team. She didn't open it. Daniel saw the notification. "They're forcing an evaluation," he said. "If you refuse, it looks defensive. If you comply, they get language." Marin Holt looked at him steadily. "What would you do?" she asked. Daniel hesitated. Then he surprised her. "I wouldn't go," he said. "Not yet." Her eyebrow lifted. "Your compliance," she said. "You're supposed to be neutral." "I am," Daniel replied. "Which is why timing matters." At 9:36 a.m., Marin Holt felt the board enter the equation. Not literally, but energetically, because executives don't panic unless someone above them can hear the noise. "Here's the play," Daniel said. "They're pushing HR to brand you unstable. You counter by staying calm and documented." "That keeps me alive," she said. "It doesn't end this." "No," he agreed. "But it buys us hours." Hours. In corporate warfare, hours are oxygen. At 9:39 a.m., Marin Holt made another decision. "Then I'm going to make them choose," she said. Daniel looked at her. "Choose what?" he asked. "Whether they want to fight internally," she said, "or explain this externally." Daniel stiffened. "You said you hadn't leaked." "I haven't," Marin Holt said. "But I prepared for the possibility." She opened her phone and showed him a draft email. No recipients. Just a subject line. Regarding unauthorized use of employee health data at Vanta Bridge. Daniel swallowed. "This would trigger the board, legal, PR, and regulators," she finished. "I know." At 9:42 a.m., Daniel stared at her like she was something new. "You planned this," he said quietly. "I planned not to disappear," Marin Holt replied. The door opened again. This time, it was HR. Two people. One clipboard. One rehearsed smile. "Marin," the woman said. "We just want to check on you." Daniel stepped between them. "Compliance is conducting a hold," he said. "This conversation is postponed." The smile faltered. At 9:45 a.m., Maren Holt watched the first crack appear. HR wasn't in charge anymore. Fear had changed hands. Her phone buzzed one last time. A message from Gavin. "You're making this bigger than it needs to be." She typed back. "Maren Holt. So did you." She didn't send it. She saved it. Evidence loves patience. At 9:48 a.m., the Slack channel went quiet. No more messages. No more reassurance. Just absence. Which told her everything. They were calling lawyers. They were calling favors. They were asking a question executives hate asking. How much does this woman know? And who else might hear it? Maren Holt stood and slipped her bag over her shoulder. Her hands were steady now. "What happens next?" she asked. Daniel met her gaze. "Next," he said, "someone tries to sacrifice someone higher than you." She nodded. Because she already knew. This wasn't about her job anymore. This was about who would fall first. And for the first time since 7:18 a.m., Maren Holt felt something close to control. At 10:06 a.m., Maren Holt stood alone in the women's restroom on the 32nd floor, staring at her reflection like it might blink first. She hadn't cried. Not once. That worried her more than tears would have. The mirror showed a woman who looked composed, alert, and slightly unreal, like someone playing herself in a movie about survival. She washed her hands even though they weren't dirty, letting the water run longer than necessary, just to feel time move. Because time was moving now. Fast. At 10:11 a.m., her phone vibrated. An internal alert. Pulse system update. User access modified. She didn't need to open it to know what that meant. Someone had been touched. Not her. Someone else. She dried her hands and walked back into the hallway. The building felt different now. Not quiet alert. Conversations stopped when she passed. People looked at their screens too quickly. The rumor engine was warming up. Fear always leaked. At 10:17 a.m., Daniel intercepted her near compliance. His face was pale. "They made a move," he said. "Who?" Maren Holt asked. Daniel hesitated. Then he said the name. Rachel Kim. The name hit her like a dropped plate. Rachel. Junior data engineer. 32. New mother. Smart. Careful. The kind of employee who double-checked everything because she couldn't afford a mistake. She approved an access patch, Daniel continued. Under executive direction. Maren Holt felt something twist in her chest. "They're saying," he went on, "that she misunderstood scope and enabled an unauthorized view." Of course they were. At 10:20 a.m., Maren Holt closed her eyes. This was the play. You don't sacrifice kings when pawns are easier. "Where is she?" Maren asked. "HR has her," Daniel said. "They're calling it gross negligence." Negligence. Another clean word. "Is she?" Maren began. "She's crying," Daniel said quietly. "She keeps apologizing." The words landed hard. Apologizing. For obeying. At 10:23 a.m., Maren Holt felt the floor tilt again, but this time, not from fear. From anger. This was the cost. This was the moment every system eventually demanded. Not can you survive? But who are you willing to let bleed so you can? Daniel watched her carefully. "They're offering you a deal," he said. Her head snapped up. "What kind of deal?" she asked. "A separation," he said. Quiet. Generous. No admission of fault. "And Rachel?" Maren Holt asked. Daniel didn't answer right away. "She takes the fall," he said. "They preserve leadership. You walk." At 10:26 a.m., Maren Holt laughed. It came out sharp and short. "So I disappear," she said. "And they destroy a junior employee to clean the floor." Daniel looked down. "That's the structure," he said. "It's ugly, but it works." Maren Holt stepped closer to him. "And compliance?" she asked. Daniel met her gaze. "Compliance documents," he said. "It doesn't rescue." At Tio. Shugonyo am. Silence stretched between them. This was the quiet before the real choice. "Can I see her?" Maren Holt asked. Daniel frowned. "That's not advisable," he said. "I didn't ask if it was advisable," she replied. "I asked if I can." At 10:33 a.m., Daniel led her to a small interview room near HR. Rachel sat inside, hunched forward, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Her eyes lifted when Maren Holt entered. "I'm sorry," Rachel said immediately. "I didn't know. They said it was routine." Maren Holt felt the weight of the moment press down on her chest. She sat across from Rachel. "You didn't do anything wrong," Maren said. Rachel shook her head. "They said I broke protocol," she whispered. "They said people might lose trust." Trust. That word again. At 10:36 a.m., Maren Holt leaned forward. "Rachel," she said gently, "did anyone ever tell you to remove dual control from Pulse?" Rachel froze. "No," she said. "I wouldn't have." "Did anyone tell you it was already removed?" Maren asked. Rachel swallowed. "Yes," she said. "They said leadership had approved it weeks ago." Maren Holt closed her eyes. There it was. At 10:38 a.m., Maren Holt stood and turned to Daniel. "They're lying," she said. "And you know it." Daniel nodded once. "I do," he said. "But knowing and proving are different." Maren looked back at Rachel. At the fear. At the guilt that didn't belong to her. At 10:40 a.m., Maren Holt made the decision she had been circling since 7:18 a.m. She took out her phone. She opened the draft email. Her thumb hovered. Daniel's voice dropped. "If you send that," he said, "there's no walking away." "I know," Maren Holt said. "If you don't," he replied, "Rachel loses everything." Rachel looked between them, confused, terrified. "Please," Rachel whispered. "I'll sign whatever they want." Maren Holt felt her throat tighten. This was the human cost executives never saw on dashboards. Ati. Tokfila am Maren Holt hit send. The email went out. To the board. To legal. To external counsel. To the regulator's intake address she'd saved years ago. Just in case. The room went silent. At 10:43 a.m., Daniel's phone started ringing. At 10:44 a.m., Slack exploded. At 10:45 a.m., HR's rehearsed calm evaporated. At 10:47 a.m., Maren Holt felt something strange. Relief. Not safety. Not victory. Relief. Because the choice was made. She looked at Rachel. "You're not alone anymore," Maren said. Rachel's eyes filled with tears. "What's going to happen?" Rachel asked. Maren Holt stood straighter. "Now," she said. "They have to explain why they chose you." At 11:06 a.m., Maren Holt sat in a quiet corner of compliance while the building above her began to burn without smoke. You could feel it in the air. Emails stopped being polite. Phones stopped ringing politely. People stopped pretending this was a misunderstanding. This wasn't a meeting anymore. This was a reckoning. At 11:11 a.m., Daniel returned, his tie loosened, his voice low. "The board called an emergency session," he said. "No assistants, no decks, no talking points." That was how you knew it was real. Boards didn't panic publicly. They panicked privately. "And Gavin?" Maren Holt asked. Daniel hesitated. "He's been asked to wait outside," he said. Her lips pressed together. "And Sloane?" she asked. "She's in the room," Daniel replied. "And she's not smiling." At 11:14 a.m., Maren Holt was escorted upstairs, past floors she'd helped design, past glass walls that reflected her back at herself like a memory that refused to fade. No badge scan. No escort grip. Just quiet doors opening ahead of her. The boardroom was larger than she remembered. Long table, soft leather chairs. A skyline view that made people feel important when they forgot what they were responsible for. 7 board members sat around the table. No names. No introductions. Power didn't need labels. At the far end, Sloane Mercer sat rigid, hands folded, face perfectly still. Her eyes lifted when Maren Holt entered. Not with anger. With calculation. At 11:18 a.m., the chair cleared his throat. "Maren," he said, using her first name like a courtesy he hadn't earned yet. "Thank you for coming on short notice." "I didn't come," Maren Holt said evenly. "I was summoned." A few eyebrows lifted. "Good. We've reviewed your communication," the chair continued. "It raises serious concerns." "It should," she replied. Silence. Then one board member leaned forward. "Let's be precise," the woman said. Are you alleging that executive leadership used employee health data to preemptively terminate staff? Yes, Marin Holt said, with predictive modeling. And you have proof? The woman asked. Yes, she said again. At 11:22 a.m., Daniel connected a secure device to the screen. Marin Holt stood. She didn't pace. She didn't gesture. She spoke like someone who knew interruption would cheapen the truth. Pulse was sold as wellness, she said. In practice, it became a compliance-free surveillance layer. Charts appeared. Sleep disruption correlated with termination risk. Stress variance flagged for succession instability. Pregnancy probability labeled attrition forecast. No commentary. Just data. The room tightened. At 11:26 a.m., Sloan finally spoke. This analysis is misleading, she said calmly. Correlation is not causation. Marin Holt turned to her. Correct, she said, which is why causation was manually introduced at 6:44 a.m. when dual control was removed. The timestamp appeared. The room shifted. Sloane's jaw tightened. That change was authorized, she said. By whom? Marin Holt asked. Sloane didn't answer. At 11:29 a.m., another board member spoke. Why was dual control removed? He asked. Sloane inhaled. To streamline decision-making during integration, she said. Streamline, Marin Holt repeated softly. Is that what we call silent exits now? A murmur rippled across the table. At 11:32 a.m., the chair raised a hand. Enough, he said. Marin, one question. She looked at him. Why send this externally? He asked. Why not let us handle it internally? This was the moment executives always believed they owned. Marin Holt didn't rush it. I tried, she said. Internally, I was flagged, isolated, and framed. She looked around the table. And when that didn't work, she continued, a junior employee was selected to absorb the blame. Rachel's name wasn't spoken. It didn't need to be. At 11:35 a.m., the chair leaned back. That's a serious claim, he said. Yes, Marin Holt replied. So are the consequences of ignoring it. Silence stretched again. Then a voice came from the far end of the table. Where is Gavin Weller? At 11:37 a.m., the door opened. Gavin entered. He looked smaller here, less polished, less certain. He took a seat without meeting Marin Holt's eyes. Gavin, the chair said, did you authorize a termination priority list? Gavin swallowed. No, he said. I followed technical guidance. Sloane's head turned sharply. At 11:39 a.m., the room cracked. You approved execution, Sloane said coldly. You asked for the list. Gavin stared at her. You built the system, he snapped. You told me it was compliant. Voices rose. Not shouting. Worse, blame. At 11:42 a.m., Marin Holt stepped back. She didn't need to speak anymore. They were doing it for her. The board watched silently as two executives dismantled each other in real time. This was the sacrifice Daniel had predicted, just not the one they planned. At 11:45 a.m., the chair stood. That's enough, he said. This session is adjourned. He looked at Marin Holt. You are no longer an employee of Vanta Bridge, he said. Her heart stilled. Effective immediately, he continued. You are a protected reporting party. The words landed heavy. Protected. Reporting. Party. At 11:47 a.m., security escorted Gavin out. Not roughly. Firmly. Sloane remained seated. Still. At 11:49 a.m., Marin Holt gathered her bag. No one stopped her. As she walked toward the door, the chair spoke again. One more thing, Marin. She turned. You didn't have to do this the way you did, he said. She met his gaze. No, Marin Holt replied. But someone had to. At 11:52 a.m., she stepped out of the boardroom. Not victorious, but intact. And for the first time all day, the building felt smaller behind her. At 6:12 p.m., Marin Holt stepped out of the Vantabridge building for the last time. No escort. No box of belongings. No farewell email sent on her behalf. Just the revolving doors turning once more, releasing her into the evening air like a held breath finally let go. The city looked the same. Cars moved. Lights changed. People hurried past her without knowing what had collapsed, a few floors above their heads. That was always the strangest part. Reckonings happened quietly. At 6:19 p.m., Marin Holt sat on a concrete bench across the street, her phone resting face down beside her. She didn't check the news. She didn't check her inbox. She let her shoulders drop for the first time all day. Only then did she feel how tired she was. Not the tiredness of overwork. The deeper kind. The kind that comes from holding truth in a place that doesn't want it. At 6:27 p.m., her phone buzzed. One message. From Daniel. They've placed Sloan on administrative leave. External counsel confirmed regulator review. Rachel's termination has been rescinded. Marin Holt closed her eyes. The knot in her chest loosened. Not completely, but enough. She typed back one word. Thank you. Then, she turned the phone off. At 6:41 p.m., Marin Holt walked home. She passed restaurants full of people laughing too loudly. Office workers complaining about deadlines that no longer mattered. Couples negotiating dinner like it was diplomacy. Normal life. She realized something then. She had missed this. At 7:03 p.m., Marin Holt unlocked her apartment door. Inside, everything was exactly where she'd left it that morning. Her mug in the sink. A sweater draped over the chair. A notebook open on the desk. She stood there for a moment, listening to the quiet. Not the tense quiet of compliance. The honest kind. At 7:11 p.m., she sat at her desk and opened the notebook. On the first page, written weeks ago in neat handwriting, were the words, "If this ever goes wrong, remember why you built it right." She turned the page and wrote a new line beneath it. Because people trust systems more than people. She paused, then added, and that's why systems must answer to people. At 7:24 p.m., her phone powered back on. Notifications flooded in. Missed calls. Emails. Unknown numbers. One subject line caught her eye. Inquiry request, independent ethics, and data governance role. She didn't open it yet. At 7:36 p.m., another message arrived. From Rachel. I don't know how to thank you. They said I can come back if I want. I don't think I will. But, thank you for seeing me. Marin Holt stared at the message for a long moment. Then she replied, you didn't need saving. You needed the truth to show up on time. At 8:02 p.m., Marin Holt poured herself a glass of water and stood by the window. The city glowed below. She thought about Pulse. About how something built with good intentions had been bent by power, speed, and fear. She didn't hate it. That surprised her. She understood it. Systems didn't become cruel on their own. They learned from the people who used them. At 8:19 p.m., Marin Holt made a quiet promise to herself. The next system she built would have one rule written into its bones. If it can be used to erase someone, it must also be able to expose the eraser. At 8:41 p.m., she closed her laptop. Tomorrow would come with meetings, with lawyers, with interviews, with offers that came wrapped in concern and prestige. But tonight was hers. At 9:06 p.m., Marin Holt lay on her couch, lights off, city noise humming softly through the window. Her phone lit up one last time. A news alert. Vantabridge faces federal inquiry over employee data practices. She didn't click it. She smiled. Not because she'd won, but because she hadn't disappeared. At 9:18 p.m., Marin Holt closed her eyes. And for the first time since 7:18 a.m., her pulse was finally her own. Final lessons. Lesson 1. The illusion of efficiency. The most dangerous abuse in modern workplaces doesn't come from rage or cruelty. It comes from efficiency, optimization, and decisions made so quietly that no one feels responsible. Lesson 2. When data replaces humanity. When data replaces judgment, people stop being human and start becoming liabilities. And once someone becomes a liability, removing them feels logical instead of wrong. Lesson 3. The cost of silence. A system that punishes truth-tellers doesn't stay stable. It only grows quieter until the silence becomes too heavy to hold. Lesson 4. Hiding is the real failure. Organizations don't collapse because they make mistakes. They collapse because they choose to hide those mistakes instead of facing them. Lesson 5. The convenient sacrifice. The easiest way to protect power is to sacrifice someone who can't fight back. Not because it's fair, but because it's efficient and rarely challenged. Lesson 6. The real meaning of courage. Real courage isn't exposing wrongdoing when it's safe. It's speaking up when silence would protect you and destroy someone else. Lesson 7. The true cost of survival. If your survival depends on someone else's destruction, you were never winning. You were only postponing the moment the system demands another victim. Final closing lesson. The core truth. True justice isn't about revenge or punishment. It's about building a future where the same harm can't happen again.